Okay, so we're going to continue along with this. The only thing that I'm going to change is I'm going to create a couple of partial views. One reason I'm going to do it is that in the end it's going to be a lot more efficient for your application. I mean, we have two forms here, an edit and a create, where there's a lot of similarity, but you know, they're basically using two different forms because when we created them, we ended up creating them with the you know, through the controller, and it ended up putting all that scaffolding in for us. I mean, we could have created a form that was a partial view and reused it. The other thing that I want to do is that when we start doing Ajax, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Ajax updates a couple of different ways. We're going to do something called the donut hole method, and we're also just going to do get a partial update for a page. And since we're going to do that, I'm kind of going to set us up in order to do that. So I'm going to do two partial views, and I'm going to show you how I like to do these. So what we have now is we have an edit and we have a create, and everything is really what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically use everything in between, you know, this div for the first name going down here to the submit button, because the submit button, frankly, I think the submit button might be the same on both these things. I think both of them, they might say, well, one says create, one says save. All right, so we'll keep that difference there. So the way that I like to do this is real simple, because both these things use the same model, is to just, you know, go in here and just make a copy of this. And then I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this form. You know, maybe it's a little bit better even to call it contact form, right? Well, we can just call it form because it is in the contact folder, right? So we'll just call it form. Okay. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit it. And what I'm going to do is a few different things here. I'm going to go first of all and put something in here that says that I'm not using any layout. So this, I'm not positive that you necessarily need this right now. I mean, we could actually go and browse. Now we can't browse to it, and the reason why we can't browse to it is there's not going to be any action for it. When we end up doing our other partial view, we're going to have an action for it, and we'll be able to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to take out all the stuff that is, you know, basically everything except the form that I had here. And this is just one way to do it. I find it to be a pretty easy way to do it. So this is pretty much my form, right? And both these things are going to share the same form. And if I save this and I go back to our edit page, I could go in here and I could pull all this stuff out, right? And what I could do is I could say, and this is, I had shown you this before, where we're not using the @ symbol to output something on the page. We're not doing a response.write, where, you know, this ends up HTML hidden for, again, if you mouse over, it returns a string. When you end up rendering a partial view, it actually renders it right out to the output stream. So we're going to render partial, and we just have to say where this view is, and this is going to be form. And we're not even going to pass a model to it. And let me actually just add one more thing here, is that when you have the @ symbol and the braces, you basically have to have a valid C# code, and that's why you have the semicolon. So if we do that here, okay, it's going to look for a view within this folder. It'll also look in the shared folder. And what it's going to do is that in terms of its model, it'll pass the same model that's here. Nothing would prevent me from passing another model, but I really don't need to pass another model. I really need that contact information. So it'll pass whatever model is here when you end up calling this, right? But you always have the ability to create a model. And I'm going to go back to my create form, and I'm going to do the same thing. This just becomes, you know, one less thing that you have to worry about maintaining. If you decided to change something on this form, you know, like, for instance, one of the things that I saw here, let's actually just look at an example of this. So if I go in here, and I shouldn't have to rebuild it, because if I fact is I didn't change any code behind. But if I do create, that looks good, right? I do edit, that looks good, right? I could save it. You know, for instance, just for kicks here, I mean, if I went in here to the forum and I decided to, I don't know, put an asterisk here for first name, put another one here for last name, right? Put another one here for email. Instead of having to do that twice, now I'm reusing this. And if I go back here and I go to edit, I'll see that here. And if I go to create, I'll see that here. So that's something that's pretty useful to do. Now I want to do one more thing, and I also want to just give you a little bit of explain the difference between the two of them. I'm going to do the same thing for my for a lot of the code that's on my index page. And what I'm going to do, my index page is my listing page, right? And what I want to do is I want to grab, I'm going to grab all this stuff, line 10, all the way down to line 76, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another partial view. So basically, I mean, this has most of the content on this page, with the exception of, I mean, it pretty much has everything, but let's just say theoretically we have some other stuff that's on this page. To our listing page. Alright, let's assume we had some other stuff that's on there. And don't forget, there is some other stuff that's going to be on the page. We have our menu and everything like that. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to do something very similar to what I did before. I'm going to call this results. Okay? And I'm going to open this up. This is going to use the same view, but again, it's going to be a partial view. I'm basically just going to get all that grid stuff and all the other stuff that's on that page. I'm going to set the layout as null. Okay? And I'm going to just pull out this stuff. Everything else is going to be the same. And I'm going to make my index page really pretty small here by taking everything that's below here and just going in and using our, spell welcome correctly too. I'm going to say HTML render partial. So again, all it's doing is, you know, all the view needs is a model. We're using the same model that's here. So I'm going to go here and say this is going to be results. Okay, and I'm not going to change the model. This has to be a valid C# statement. I'm going to save this. And again, I didn't change anything on the code behind. I should be able to go here, and my listing page should work the same way. Let's see. So this is our, one of the things that can become kind of interesting here. And we're going to use this later on. We're not going to use it now, but it's something that we're going to be able to use later on. If I look at my contact controller, so I've got my index action. Okay, I mean, what I can do here, just so you can sort of see, you know, how this could work. And there's going to be a little bit of duplicate code here. You know, at some point we could go and fix it. But what I want to do is, if I wanted to use this model as a partial update, let me rephrase that. If I wanted to use this results view, which is going to be all the stuff that's from here all the way down to the bottom, if I wanted to use that as a partial update, one easy way to do it is, you know, if I could use Ajax, and if I click on these, I could basically just update this portion of the page. Now again, it doesn't make sense if this is the only thing on the page, but you can imagine, you know, maybe you have a grid here, you have another grid here, you have another grid here, and you want to update them independently. So what I can do here is I could actually take this, let me think this is the best way that I want to do this. I could actually copy this and I'm going to call this the same name as my view, right? I'm going to call this results. I'll show you something that's kind of interesting. So once I do that, and I'm going to build this, I don't really have a need for this right now. Right now, I'm not going to call this action, but this gives me the ability to call this and see this view, from a route. If I don't have an action for it, I can't see it through a route. If I end up, let me show you what I mean. The best way to see this is that instead of going contact page J, I think what I could do is I could say contact results, and I could say prefix equals B. Let's see what that looks like if I do that. Right? So you don't have any styling or anything like that, but you do have your results, right? If I said prefix C, right, I'm going to end up getting this, right? And I could do ascending and I could do descending. By default right now it's probably descending because if you don't have a value for a Boolean value, it's not gonna it's gonna be false. But you can see that, right? It's CZ, right? If I said and ascending equals true, right? You can actually see it up here too, and it'll look like this, right? So we're going to end up using that. We're going to use a render action a little bit later on. Let me just think if that's yeah. Although we could use this in our view at this point, one thing we could probably do right now, just to make this a little bit simple, you can see there's a lot of duplicate code that's here, right? One thing we could do pretty easily is that, since if we end up looking at our list view here, right, our index, here's our model. Instead of doing render partial here, which is totally fine, we could say render action, okay? And if we say render action, right, what we could do is call results, and it's going to pass the same model that we have here, or same model or same. Let's test this out. I think this will work. Route values. Let's see. Let's see whether or not that works. I think one thing we could do here is say for the route values, it's going to be new prefix equals model dot prefix, and ascending equals model dot ascending. Let's just test that out. I think that this will work. So what this is going to do is it's going to call this render action in this controller, and we're going. I thought maybe I could pass the model here, but I'm not positive of that. Let's see what happens without it. It might break, but let's see. So we're going to do render action results, and we're going to take our home controller, and what I'm going to do, our contact controller, I'm going to pull all this out. Or I'll comment it out for the moment. I'm not that brave. We're going to build it. And I'm going to go back to my page here. Okay, so this is not quite working. It's not passing the model in here, right? Oh, the reason it's not passing, let's click on this. Okay, actually that works fine, right? Welcome to our listing page. Okay, so it's the same thing here. Render action. Whether you do render action, all right. I don't know. I was spacing on that. So whether or not you do render action or whether or not you do render partial, okay, this is going to end up calling the action. The only thing that saves us here is that we really don't need to populate all this stuff here because we're not doing anything with those values. I mean, we're only doing something when we end up getting into our results. So we could take this out here. I mean, in essence, all we're getting here is, you know, the ascending value and the letter and the prefix. Okay, the model gets put back here, and here is really where the model gets populated, which is in the results. So that's perfectly fine. So what you could have a partial view without actually adding an action, and we could have done that here. But this is going to actually come in pretty handy. And the other thing, again, you could test this out separate from this. If you had a lot of other stuff going on, you could test it. But more importantly, we're going to be able to call this as an AJAX request to get this value. So that's something that we're going to end up doing in our next lesson. We're going to start taking a look at jQuery. So let's save this, and I'll see you in a bit.